King David, once a shepherd boy anointed by God, had ascended to the throne of Israel. He united the tribes, defeated his enemies, and established a powerful kingdom. Yet, even within this narrative of victory and devotion, seeds of turmoil were sown. David, despite his heart after God, was a man of passions and weaknesses. The scriptures remind us that even those who walk closely with God are not immune to the temptations and consequences of sin. This period of David's life, chronicled in 2 Samuel chapters 13 to 24, marks a stark turning point. The consequences of David's sin with Bathsheba cast a long shadow over his family. The peace and prosperity that characterized his reign begin to unravel, revealing the fragility of human virtue and the enduring consequences of sin. It is a story of sin and its devastating consequences, of grace and judgment, and ultimately of God's unwavering faithfulness even in the midst of human failure. The idyllic image of David's family is shattered with the heinous act of Amnon, David's son, against his half-sister Tamar. Driven by lust and a sense of entitlement, Amnon commits a grave sin, leaving Tamar deeply traumatized. David, upon hearing of this horrific act, is consumed by anger and grief. However, his reaction is strangely passive. He fails to act decisively, to bring Amnon to justice, and his inaction speaks volumes. Absalom, Tamar's full brother, witnesses his father's inaction and is consumed by rage. He becomes a man on a mission, driven by a thirst for vengeance that festers within him for 2 long years. The text vividly portrays Absalom's cunning and ruthlessness as he plots to avenge his sister's honor. This pivotal event within David's family marks the beginning of his downward spiral, a descent fueled by vengeance, rebellion, and divine judgment. Absalom, consumed by his vendetta, finally executes his plan. He invites all of David's sons to a feast, and it is there, in the midst of merriment, that Amnon is murdered on Absalom's orders. This act of cold-blooded revenge sends shockwaves through David's family and throws the kingdom into turmoil. Fearing for his own life, Absalom flees Jerusalem and remains in exile for 3 years. With cunning and ambition, he begins to sow seeds of discord throughout Israel. Absalom's rebellion is not merely an act of personal vengeance. It is a calculated political maneuver. The kingdom of Israel, once united under David's rule, is now teetering on the brink of civil war. Word reaches David of Absalom's growing support and the imminent threat to Jerusalem. Realizing the gravity of the situation, David makes the heartbreaking decision to flee the city, choosing strategic retreat over a bloody confrontation with his own son. David's flight from Jerusalem is a poignant image of defeat and despair. The inevitable clash between David's loyalists and Absalom's forces takes place in the forest of Ephraim. Despite David's explicit instructions to spare Absalom's life, the young and arrogant prince meets his demise, his long hair entangled in the branches of a tree, leaving him vulnerable to the killing blow. The news of Absalom's death, though a strategic victory for David, shatters his heart. David returns to Jerusalem, not in triumph, but in sorrow, his kingdom scarred, his family broken, and his spirit crushed. Though David returns to Jerusalem and reclaims his throne, his kingdom is forever changed. The rebellion has left its mark, revealing the fragility of peace and the enduring consequences of sin. David's final years are marked by unrest, internal power struggles, and the ever-present shadow of his past mistakes. Sheba, a Benjamite, seizes the opportunity to incite further rebellion, exploiting the lingering divisions within the kingdom. Even as David grapples with external threats, he faces divine judgment for his past sin with Bathsheba. The prophet Nathan, who once confronted David about his adultery and murder, returns with a chilling message: the sword will never depart from his house. David's final act as king is to ensure the succession of Solomon, his son, by Bathsheba. Despite the turmoil and heartache, David remains a man after God's own heart. David's story, in all its complexity and tragedy, reminds us that even in our darkest moments, God's grace is always sufficient. Thank you for watching. There are links if you want to support my work. May the Creator bless you always.